Good evening. I am Chris Lee of Southeastern 14, joined by Blayne Gilmer. This is our game day reaction show. We are doing this around 9:45 Central as we're doing this. In case you were catching this later, the Alabama LSU game has about 8 minutes left. Alabama up 14. So we will unpack a little bit of this, return to it later. We'll go over a little bit of everybody today in what was just a wild weekend of SEC football. I think more entertaining than any of us probably would have bargained for.
Just good games a lot of times, Chris.
Yeah.
Good games more than anything.
Yeah, we didn't always expect that, especially in Gainesville. That was a wild one that we'll unpack. Okay, our show is presented by Bet Online. The last of major pro sports leagues is off and rolling. College basketball ready to go as well on Monday. Bet Online remains your top spot for all your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, and NHL are all in full swing. Bet Online is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions. All the hoops betting action, along with every sport available at your fingertips, with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to Bet Online today. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that is BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. Okay, Blayne, Alabama is marching again, threatening to put this one away with LSU. Jayden Daniels went down, which was, no offense to Garrett Nussmeier, probably the last straw for LSU. It feels like Alabama's just had space all night. I felt like both quarterbacks were going to run for about 1,000 yards combined. This game has been fun to watch, although it's getting less interesting at the end here, especially if Alabama is to put one more touchdown on the board here, which it looks like it is going to do.
For sure. And we knew that the stops were going to be hard to come by for LSU. And then when they turned the ball over in their own territory on that interception and gave Alabama the chance to go up 2 scores, that was really kind of it right there. I think as it happened there towards in the fourth quarter. So, I think we all knew that Alabama was going to be able to do its part offensively. We just wondered if they would be able to get enough stops against LSU defensively, and they proved to be able to do so. So, and like you said, they're driving to put this one away. Both quarterbacks put it all out there. You just hope Jayden Daniels is okay. I mean, I tweeted out he may have a broken jaw after that hit. That was a really, really brutal hit. I'm surprised that Dallas Turner didn't get kicked out of the game.
I was going to ask you about that. I mean, the NFL, that is the old, your body weight on the guy penalty. I think that one's going to be talked about a lot this week. And again, my concern, seeing Jayden Daniels at Media Day, I told you as soon as I saw him, he's not a very big guy. I worry about the beating he is going to take, getting as many touches as he's gotten. And Tyler says he's in concussion protocol. That's correct also. And here we are. I hate that it went down that way. He is a fine player. You may see the best player in the SEC get knocked out of the Heisman race with injury in November for the second straight year, just like it happened in the Hooker last year. Hope not. No, again, they've got a capable backup, but Jayden Daniels is irreplaceable with all that he does for LSU.
Yeah, he's so elusive, but and I see what you're saying with the weight and stuff right there. But everybody's jawbone is about the same density, and when Dallas Turner came down helmet on that jawbone, I just thought it was kind of a dirty hit there in terms of how it went down. But hey, we'll see what the league ends up saying about it afterwards, or if they say anything about it afterwards. But that game certainly sets up Alabama to be in the driver's seat in the SEC West going forward as it stands right now. And then, Chris, a battle for SEC East supremacy took place today between Georgia and Missouri.
Yes, it did. That's one. I think that game was interesting. Obviously, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, interesting. Arkansas, Florida was interesting. The rest only interesting in small degrees. But let's start with Georgia, Missouri. I know you watched that one start to finish. I tried to watch it a little bit here and there. For full disclosure, we had some family in town this weekend, and had some stuff going on. And I was at Vandy Auburn today watching that from the press box and trying to follow Missouri, Georgia on the phone. So if I missed something obvious, forgive me there. I probably watched less football this week than I did any other week, but I've followed it along as best I could. But I feel like that Nazir Stackhouse pick, that's the one that everybody's talking about after the game. He drops back into coverage, picks one off, runs it back about 50 yards. Probably the defining play of that game. Is that fair?
Yeah, he ran it back, and then they called a blindside block penalty that took it back further, or that would have helped Georgia really cement that thing and maybe punch in another score. But you have to give Missouri so much credit for the physicality they played with on the lines of scrimmage. They held their own, for sure. They have a unique scheme with their stretch run play. The angle and the speed at which it hits was giving Georgia a little bit of problems there. And one thing that happened in the game was Jamon Dumas-Johnson went out with an injury to his arm, and it could be a serious injury, and that was kind of a big blow. There were two injuries in this game. Luther Burden played the entire game, but he was just his ankle was a little bit gimpy after a pass that he went for in the end zone and came up a little bit lame after that. So he really wasn't the same after, I guess, late second quarter with how he was. And then Jamon Dumas-Johnson there in the third quarter going down with his arm there, and Georgia being forced to play some young linebackers in the middle. Those were things you just have to deal with here in the season as you go forward, because injuries are going to happen. Listen, I just think when it came down to it, these were two very good football teams, Chris, that we expected to play good football, and we thought it would come down to who handles third downs better, who takes care of the ball better. Georgia ended up taking care of the ball better, and the third downs were about the same. Red zone about the same for both teams. So when it came down to it, it was who took care of the ball better, and that was Georgia.
Yeah, my concern for Missouri for a couple of weeks would be that you would see some aggression from Brady Cook. I think you saw that today. Maybe one of the key stats, he's only 14 for 30. He'd been accurate at about a 70% rate. That had kept the chains moving, kept that defense off the field. That didn't happen today. Now, I'll tell you what did surprise me a little bit was Cody Schrader being as effective as he was in that game, too. I think that kind of kept Missouri in it. They were even at 21 on first downs. That was not really something I expected to see out of that game. And we'll talk more about Georgia in a minute, but I thought that 112-yard rushing game really kind of helped keep them in it.
Yeah, and I think part of that was, Georgia was also a little threatened because of some stuff that Brady Cook did with his legs early on. So listen, Missouri throws a lot at you, right? And Kirby Smart said it in the post-game press conference. They're smart with how they run the ball too. They don't just run it, saying, "Hey, we're going to call a run play here." They have the ability to find, okay, where are the numbers, and then they run to it in their scheme. As at least what Kirby Smart indicated what was going on between the chess match between him and Eli Drinkwitz and Kirby Moore over there on the Mizzou side, and how they ran the ball. Schrader runs hard. They did a great job, but Georgia, man, the way that they're able to we mentioned it a couple weeks ago, Chris, they're able to be their best when their best is required. And it seems like they continue to find ways to win ball games. 9-0 now, 26 straight ball games. That's approaching some pretty unbelievable territory in terms of games won streaks. And now they get opportunity to host College game day atmosphere against Ole Miss next week, and we'll get into all that. But on the other side of the ball, Chris, I can't tell you enough how impressive it is how steady Carson Beck continues to be.
Yeah.
He just lots of times not necessarily being just overly great at any one thing, but he's good at everything, and he's able to just steady the waters a little bit for Georgia. He even had some key pickups on third downs with his legs in this game. A couple of different runs. Now, it doesn't look like it from the box score because those were negated by 3 sacks that he had. But, man, two really good football teams that played a quality SEC game today, Chris.
Yeah, I did a quick thing on this game this week, and I said if Missouri is going to win this game, it's probably going to have to be a plus in the turnover category and probably a +2 or greater. I just thought the talent difference was probably that great. No knock to Missouri. I mean, we're talking about the two-time defending national champion here and a team that recruits at a historically elite level. But it was -2 today, and to the Georgia end of that's Carson Beck continuing with just to take care of business. 254 yards, no picks. And I think that was the difference was probably quarterback play here, and Georgia got the better end of that.
Yeah, no doubt. I think, like I said, Carson Beck continues to play. He was 21 to 32, had a couple of drops, had a couple of missed routes by the receivers that could have made that completion rate even higher over there. But he does such a good job pre-snap, Chris. You see him check runs the other side. You see him check out of plays. He, in fact, checked, according to Kirby Smart, he checked to the play that Dominic Lovett scored his touchdown on today in the red zone on the screen pass. So you've got to give a tip of the cap for making it hard, Missouri making it hard on Georgia to get everything they necessarily wanted. But two things stood out to me, Chris. Georgia was not only just rock solid in terms of valuing the football and offense, they owned the game on special teams. I mean, they're punting. Brett Thorson is a weapon with how he punts the football. And then young Peyton Woodring, the freshman that had a couple of shaky kicks early on in the year when Georgia was up by 3 and they were on, I think, on the 30 something, in about their own 30 something. He hits a 48-yard field goal, and it was just a huge to put him up by 6. It was just a big kick for a freshman to do. So I think special teams were a big difference, and you love talking about special teams, Chris.
I do. Speaking of special teams, Will Reichard's missed 2 field goals tonight. Missed one a minute ago that would have put this game away, but Alabama has now gotten a stop on 4th down. Nussmeier misfired from Malik Neighbors. And so Alabama's taken over and will just run out the clock up 14 with 2 minutes left. Look, I haven't fact-checked this yet, but you always see me glancing off to one side. That's why I look at my helmet schedule and try to do quick math on things. But correct me if I'm wrong, but if Georgia beats Ole Miss next week, and if Alabama beats Kentucky next week, and I think that game is in Lexington, it is.
Yeah, it's at
Then
Lexington.
we'll have our SEC title game set. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, they can both clinch next week. So
Okay.
that'll be a big driving force for both of them. Of course, those programs you don't have to have a whole lot of extra motivation. They just thrive on the task that's in front of them, and that's kind of how Georgia was built in the Kirby way, where he learned it from Nick Saban. So that's kind of how these two programs are built. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Two matchups that pose different problems, and we'll get into those next week. But I just wanted to tell again all the Missouri fans that we have on here, and we've talked about all the week. There are no moral victories, but man, you got a lot to be proud of with Eli Drinkwitz and how that team goes about playing football. They play it the right way, and they really compete.
You never know from year to year. I think we tend to overestimate what a team does one season, especially at the end, and how it carries over. Not picking on these guys, but South Carolina being an example. Beating Tennessee, beating Clemson, everybody thinking, all right, this would be a 10-win year, maybe finish second in the East, and that's not gone as well as people thought. And again, it's the portal and all sorts of things. But I feel like Missouri, with the recruiting and the NIL laws and things like that, and now Eli Drinkwitz has established that they can have one of those breakthrough seasons. And I feel like I never really expected them to go down to Athens and win, but it felt like in my gut, because goodness knows how many times have we seen Georgia do this, Blayne. That's the kind of game where Georgia beats somebody by 35 or 40. I felt
Yeah,
like
I mean,
Missouri taking that game deep into the fourth quarter was a little bit of validation for what Eli Drinkwitz is doing there.
yeah, and Chris, there's also such thing as, hey, there are certain coaches and certain styles and certain programs that you've seen it over the years, whether it was when James Franklin was at Vanderbilt against Georgia or things like that, that they just play in a fashion and a style where they match up well with other teams. And Missouri, not just the last year, the year before that, hey, 3 or 4 years in a row, Missouri plays tough football against Kirby Smart and his staff and his scheme and things like that. So they match up well and they play hard. And with what you mentioned there, they've got Williams Winari that's committed, number one prospect in the country by some people. He's out of the Kansas City area. He's going to be a big difference maker. They won a head-to-head battle with Georgia for him for recruiting right there. They're still trying to flip Ryan Wingo, who committed to Texas. I mean, there's a lot of recruiting stuff that is going, that Missouri's right there in the thick of, especially with those Kansas City, St. Louis, prospects around there. So yeah, I think Missouri's got a lot to look forward to in the future, and it looks like the Missouri admin did a good job of locking up Drinkwitz, what they did for that extension last year, when many people were scratching their heads about that.
Any more thoughts on Georgia, Missouri before we move on to Alabama, LSU, because that one has just ended?
Yeah, Georgia, as long as they can continue to do what they're doing right now, I feel like they'll be a heavy favorite over Ole Miss at home, because we'll talk about Ole Miss, Texas A&M in a little while, but as it gets going, and if they can keep winning these games and Brock Bowers gets healthier and healthier, think what this offense is going to look like come SEC championship or playoff time, because all of these guys now, Chris, will have had to step up and get these extra reps and extra targets and all that. And then you sprinkled the best player in college football, in my opinion, back in with Brock Bowers. I mean, that's going to be scary for other folks later on down the road, in my opinion, for Georgia.
All right, let's play guess the line on Georgia Ole Miss next week. I've got a number in mind. I want to see if you are where I am.
10.5.
I was thinking 10.
Yeah, I think it'd be 10.5. I think it opened up at 13. It'll come down a little bit maybe, but I don't know. We can talk about, and we're going to talk about Alabama, LSU, but if you want to talk about Ole Miss, Texas A&M real quick, we can talk about that too, because the Ole Miss defense was atrocious today against a not great Texas A&M offense.
Yeah, let's go there first. That might give Alabama and LSU fans a little time to get in here. And again, that's one I did not get to see much of. I was kind of following along. A&M made a really good run at it late and just couldn't finish. Yeah, A&M had a field day offensively. Trey Harris had just an unbelievable day for Ole Miss. Jackson Dart was great again. It's kind of the way that we thought Ole Miss would win. That's just outscoring people. And I'm with you. I just think that, look, Ole Miss, I'm guessing this week when playoff odds come back, it's still going to maybe have about a 10% chance to get there. I just don't know that I'm buying based on that defense.
Yeah, I mean, they're a defense that's disruptive, but you allowed Max Johnson, who, is a serviceable quarterback and an SEC experienced quarterback, but he's not the kind of quarterback that you're seeing out there, week in and week out playing at an elite level. And he goes 31 of 42 for 305 against them. And they also ran the ball for 152 yards, did Texas A&M on Ole Miss, and that was with Le'Veon Moss going out early with a knee injury. Amari Daniels really picked it up over there for him and carried the load. And there was that's without Evan Stewart even playing in this game, Chris.
Yeah.
Evan Stewart was not even available for Texas A&M. So I think there's big questions for Ole Miss's defense, especially when they're away from home, Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. Now, offensively, they continue to play great. Jackson Dart, he just knows where to go with the football. And a lot of times that's just, as you indicated, just throwing it somewhere within the catch radius of Trey Harris, because he made 2 one-handed grabs, one inbounds and one out of bounds that were just ridiculous. I mean, just crazy athletic catches. But they honed in on him a lot. They try to hit Jordan Watkins and Dayton Wade some, but they've really found a go-to target in Trey Harris there. So we're going to see what happens there. And Quinshad Judkins, not an elite day rushing the football against that Texas A&M front, but, okay, he clipped the 100-yard mark, 4.4 yards per carry. So I think obviously under Lane Kiffin, you expect the offense to be the strength of the team, but I did not expect Ole Miss to play that poorly on defense and really allow Texas A&M to have a chance to win that ball game on the road. I don't know. I think Texas A&M fans are just kind of caught in purgatory because you can't really feel terrible about what happened there against a good team on the road, but at the same time, you got to be just sick to your stomach of losing these close games and not being able to get over the hump, especially in teams that you're more talented than. And I think Texas A&M is more talented than Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think if you say, "Hey, Aggies are going to get 30 first downs today," and you're an A&M fan, you probably feel okay about it. But that's not how it went. This team, I don't know what the record for single-digit losses in conference games over a 2-year period is, but I feel pretty confident that A&M has either already set the record or is about to.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just not pretty football. Like, do you ever just watch Texas A&M's offense and think, are they operating in quicksand? Doesn't it seem like it's just taking forever for plays to develop? Like Max Johnson's holding the ball forever. I don't know what's going on, but I don't know what they're doing offensively. They ended up making enough plays, but Chris, I think there's questions for both of those teams going forward, and Ole Miss happens to have Georgia on the road next week. So
Yeah, I didn't see enough of the game today to make a comment on that aspect of it. I did notice they got Anaya Smith the ball a little bit more today. I'm
they
listening to
had
the
to because
TV
Evan Stewart wasn't
broadcast.
there.
Yeah, as I'm driving to Vandy Auburn, and that got mentioned by the TV guys. Which is what we've been saying for weeks is how do you not get kid the ball more? I mean, I guess the answer is when they've got Stewart and those other guys to take some target share, then that's what happens. But as you said, he wasn't available today. So anyway, yeah, I mean, I'm very interested. A&M is now what, 5-4, 3-3 in the league. Who's coming up? Got Mississippi State, Abilene Christian. We'll win both those, and then at LSU. Who knows at that
And
point
who
because
knows what's
LSU
going on
can't
with Jayden
defend
Daniels? We
either.
don't know how
Yeah.
badly he's injured, what it'll look like going forward. Is it just a concussion? It looked to me like his jaw they were checking out. I mean, he could
Yeah.
literally have a fractured jaw or something. I mean, that was absolutely rough.
Yeah, and if his jaw's wired shut, I would think that's going to be something that's a few weeks, and you're not playing football with a wired jaw, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, Cole says it's not pain in my voice that Ole Miss won the game. It's pain in my voice that they had to win the game like that. You expect a Ole Miss team to play better defensively to support that offense. I mean, that was just atrocious how they kind of, had so many mistakes where they could have put this thing away early. If you're Ole Miss, you don't let a field goal get blocked and run back on you, and you're probably up 21-0, and it's just songs over before halftime, and they just continue to let Texas A&M find ways to get back in the ball game. So I just hate it for that offensive side that they have to work so hard to overcome some of the shortcomings of that defense. But we'll see. We'll see what happens next week.
All right, let's talk Alabama LSU for a minute. Both quarterbacks were terrific in that game until Jayden Daniels got hurt. I felt like I only really got to see probably the last 60% of the game, but I saw a little bit more than that. But it just felt like Alabama found space to operate all night. And whatever LSU's defensive fixes were, we wondered, was that the product of the schedule? Or was that a defense that's playing more up to its talent level? And it feels like we got the answer tonight. It's not the one that folks in Baton Rouge would have wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I think they expected, especially early on, when what they were being able to do with explosive plays, with that big post to Neighbors, and you thought, okay, this could be happening all night offensively for LSU, and then it just so many times. Finally, Tommy Rees kind of let Jalen Milroe get loose a little bit with his legs, and they couldn't contain it, Chris. I mean, he ran really well, and as you mentioned earlier when you and I were talking, Jayden Daniels ran well. We thought these quarterbacks were just going to set some kind of record for quarterback rushing yards in a game. I mean, they were both very elusive and took off, but LSU just bad fundamental defense a lot of times, losing
Yes.
contain, getting lost in man coverage, getting confused when they try to go zone, not being able to disguise things well, didn't get home enough on Jalen Milroe. There was just so many things. And then gap integrity against the run. There was too many times where Jason McClellan and Jam Miller and all these guys would just kind of gash him a little bit in the run game. And when you have the dual threat of Milroe, you got to find something to stop. It's a give or take thing. You can't give everything. And LSU just simply couldn't get enough stops and didn't play good fundamental defense for most of the game.
Who did Alabama have matched up on Neighbors most tonight? Was it Terrion Arnold?
I would think it would be Kool-Aid McKinstry, but I mean,
Okay.
I'm not certain. I mean, I think they had him on both sides because LSU does such a good job of moving Neighbors around and putting him in different spots to be able to get him different matchups. So at the end of the day, the secondary for Alabama, didn't. It's not that they played, tremendous, but they didn't give up. They didn't give up as many home runs as I think some people might have thought they would have in this matchup without how talented LSU's receivers are, and they kind of kept things in front of them for the most part.
Yeah, they kind of held Brian Thomas down tonight. So, for whatever that's worth, it might just been Neighbors was so dominant. When you go 10 for $171, maybe just keep sticking with what's
Jayden
working.
Daniels ran it a lot too, and some of those were on schedule. Some of them were planned. Some of them were scrambles and things like that. So, it is what it is. When it comes down to it, you can't turn the ball over in your own territory on the road against a team as good as Alabama, and expect to win a football game. And then when Jayden Daniels went out, like you said, that was pretty much over.
You feeling better about Alabama as a playoff team after tonight, or potential? I mean, I guess it's that was poorly phrased. Look, Alabama Georgia winner is going. Loser, if it's Alabama's not. If it's Georgia, might be tough depending on whatever happens. But I guess a better way to put it is, do you feel a little bit better about Alabama's ability to match up with Georgia at the end?
I think Alabama is a very good defensive ball team. I still think that we didn't learn a whole lot about the offense in this because LSU is so bad defensively. I mean, not Alabama. LSU is so bad defensively. But I do think that it's encouraging to see Jalen Milroe be more willing to get out and use his legs because, man, he is really, really, really good. I mean, in terms of just the ability to be able to take off, there's few out there that have that ability to accelerate and make things happen. And I think if he'll do that a little bit more, embrace that a little bit more, it'll help out the struggling Alabama offensive line in terms of the pass protection, which has been well documented. They're worst in the SEC, 126 in the country. Need to be able to let him do some of those things to help out not only him and let his playmaking ability take over, but also help out that offensive line, Chris.
Here's a crazy stat, and this has got to feel devastating if you're LSU. Jalen Milroe ran for 155 yards tonight.
Yeah.
Do you know how many he ran for the last 3 weeks combined?
Nope.
Minus 48.
Yeah, I mean that's tough, and LSU just fundamentally does not keep contained. They don't play assignment football. Matt House is up there in the booth screaming because there's just massive lanes to run the football through for Jason McClellan at times. And like you said, not being able to get to Jalen Milroe enough. LSU came into this game, Chris, 13th in the conference with only 14 sacks. I don't even know how many times they got to Milroe tonight, if any at all. But I mean, it was not nearly enough to be able to thwart what he was doing with his legs, and then he would make plays when they were there to be made through the air as well. So he just continues to get better and better, and I think that's the element of Alabama's team that I think you have to be excited about. You know what you're going to get defensively. You know what you're going to get defensively, but they're getting better and better. And Chris, as we kind of wrap up that one, we have to talk about it because we got our Hog fans in here.
Yeah.
Woo Pig Suey is hitting a big bounce back win for Arkansas, Chris.
Yeah. One more note on Alabama. Alabama had given up 4 sacks or more. I think it was 8 straight games. LSU got 2 tonight.
Yeah, not enough. Not enough to what you need to be able to rattle Jalen Milroe. But speaking of rattling, Chris, like I said, Woo Pig Suey is in here, and they are excited about the win in the swamp over the name that you don't like, Chris. Sunbelt Billy gets razzed again as
this was going to be a loser's going to hear about it week. But hey, if you're Sam Pittman, what would you give for a time machine right now?
Yeah,
because my goodness, it was a different offense this week.
It was a different offense. I think, a lot of that has to do with just the energy and the being willing to move the pocket and all that kind of stuff. He said the players really gravitated towards Kenny Guyton. But at the end of the day, Florida, they didn't have Shamar James. They found out he was going to be out for the rest of the season before this game, having to play some young linebackers. Florida didn't tackle well enough in space at times. It's just poor tackling, and then not being able to get off the field on third down enough and make enough stops. I think Arkansas did a great job in terms of KJ Jefferson making plays. He always, Chris, he's a guy that, he has to do so much, it seems like, for that team all the time. Yeah. And he continually just makes plays. I think you got to be really proud they had Rocket Sanders back. If you're an Arkansas fan, you got to be really proud of KJ Jefferson's effort. 20 of 31, 255, 2 touchdowns, and then Rocket Sanders being back. And they rushed for 226 yards in this game, Chris. That Florida run defense, that's a problem for Billy Napier because Georgia ran well over 200 yards last week. Arkansas, who has been abysmal in the run game, runs for over 200 yards this week. There's problems along the defensive front down in Gator country, Chris.
I think Sanders and Jefferson both had season highs in rushing yards. And I'm just looking at this and thinking, like, if you don't tell Arkansas fans before the season, okay, this is what your record is, this is how it's gone. You just say, let's flash forward to the Florida game. You go to Gainesville and win where nobody really wins with much regularity. I mean, Tennessee got beat 15 down there, one of its 2 losses. And you say, hey, here's your box score from today. KJ throws for 255, runs for 92. Sanders gives you $103 on the ground. You beat a Florida team that's 5-3 coming in. You're like, hey, we've had the kind of season we wanted, right?
Yeah, and truthfully, they've been real close, Chris. I mean, the games that they've lost, they lost 3 just brutal games on the road, but 1-score games that a bounce a ball here or there, or maybe apparently what it looks like now, Dan Enos not being so stubborn on certain things and being more willing to move the pocket and do things like that is kind of what Sam Pittman insinuated at his press conference after letting him go. With Kenny Guyton now at the helm, I mean, you just have to wonder what could have been, with this last run with KJ Jefferson here, and it's a shame for him. But listen, even with all the craziness that has gone on this year, Chris, Arkansas has games left at home against Auburn, at home against FIU, and then at home against Missouri. They got 3 home games. They got a chance to go bowling this year after such a terrible deal, and that's a big deal for a team to get those 15 extra practices and things like that and get some of the younger guys experience. So Arkansas still playing for bowl eligibility and playing to get things going in the right direction heading into 2024.
Yeah, and of course, they've got Auburn next week. I was at Auburn Vandy today, and Vanderbilt's just beyond bad. But I was not blown away with Auburn either. I know they won the game pretty decisively, but receivers open, dropping passes. Jarquez Hunter almost ran for 200 today. I just think that Arkansas's defense, which has been pretty good most of the year, I don't know that Auburn, if this is what Arkansas is, I worry about Auburn having enough firepower to keep up, especially with that one being in Fayetteville. Again, if that's what they are, it's a one-game sample size. But again, this is a lot closer to the Arkansas offense we thought we were getting before the season.
Well, we know that the Gators run the football well at home. Usually they ran it well on Tennessee at home. They were limited to just 4 yards a carry today at 112 yards rushing. But Graham Mertz was able to put up, I don't know, almost 300 yards passing and did his thing, had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. I don't think you're going to get that kind of play from Peyton Thorne next week for Auburn and that wide receiving core. Even if they're able to run the football a little bit with Jarquez Hunter, I think Travis Williams' defense there at Arkansas, again, I think Travis Williams needs to be considered for the Broyles Award because of what he's been doing with that defense. They went from 110th in the country in scoring defense last year. And now I think they're, in the top 50 coming into this game and continues to put them in positions to win ball games. So, I think they have an aggressive defense, and I think they'll be able to have success in these last 3 home games going forward.
Well, I think maybe that shows you some buy-in from this roster for Sam Pittman too, and good for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we got a couple more games we haven't hit. They're not the games of greater importance, but let's touch on everything. Where would you like to go next?
The great chicken fight in Columbia today between the Gamecocks and Gamecocks R Us is what it was, and it was I would have just about rather watched 2 chickens fight because it was ugly at times, and South Carolina snatched victory from the jaws of defeat against Jacksonville State. Shane Beamer excoriating the fan base after the game for being joyless, bitter people that don't want to celebrate a Jacksonville State victory. He said they're going to celebrate the heck out of this victory and go and have a lot of fun with it because you only get 12 games. I got news for him. If they don't start playing better for this, he may not have any games left going forward because I just don't see South Carolina improving. I don't see any improvement. I know there's excitement in recruiting, but I see just an absolutely dreadful performance on both lines of scrimmage a lot of times, and just not a lot of energy, not a lot of excitement going on there, and the fan base was dwindling out of there well early before that game was over with, Chris, even with it being tight. So things are a little bit rough in Columbia right now.
Can we make a conference call between Shane Beamer and Dabo Swinney happen and get the tape of that?
Yeah, well, I think they would be on the same boat. They'd be like, "Oh, you hate your fans, I hate my fans too. So let's just be in the. It's like the Little Rascals used to have the He-Man Woman Haters Club, where they're going to have the pro coaches fan haters club between Dabo and Beamer. Well, and Chris is gone. I don't know what he did, but something just went away there. So I am solo now. Go ahead and throw your stuff in the chat. Oh wait, here he goes. Here he comes back. I was like, there he goes. He's gone. What happened?
Wrong browser tab. Sorry. I think you rattled me with the Little Rascals reference. That's a first on the pod. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say. Xavier Legette has another game like he's had all year. We said that the recipe for an upset here might be possible because South Carolina can't protect the passer. For whatever it's worth, Jacksonville State gets after the passer. Their schedule has been wretched, so hard to translate those things. They did get 3 sacks today, but Rattler throws for 399, and that was that.
Yeah,
and they still couldn't run the ball today, by the way.
That's the thing. I don't care when you're facing a Jacksonville State team. You should be able to run the ball for better than 2.3 yards per carry. And it just shows you how bad of a job South Carolina has done at cobbling together offensive line depth, because I know you've got injuries. I know you got injuries and things like that, but there's just not enough actual SEC offensive linemen on that team. And I think that comes down to talent acquisition and the way you manage a roster. And I don't think South Carolina's done a good job of that. So we'll see if they recruit well in the offseason. Right now, they're 10th or 11th in terms of people are excited about the recruiting class. But guess what? You're 10th or 11th in the SEC in recruiting rankings right now for this upcoming class. So I just think I see things with Texas and Oklahoma and the league getting harder. I think I see things getting worse before they get better for South Carolina.
Okay, we hit on Auburn Vandy for just a minute. Just a synopsis of that one is Jarquez Hunter broke off 2 long touchdown runs in the first quarter, went for about $120 between the two. Auburn got up 14-0. Vanderbilt really never made it a game for super long after that. So Auburn got back to Hunter, second straight 100-yard game, and walks out of Nashville with the win. Kentucky, Mississippi State, that one finished not long ago. My brother was actually there and texted me saying, man, you wouldn't believe how deafening the cowbells are down here. Thinking, yeah, I would. I've heard it before in the stands. It's crazy. But this one kind of played out a little bit like I thought it might. Devin Leary didn't have last week's Devin Leary game, which I thought he might, given State struggles against good teams in the past. Ray Davis wasn't great again. I don't know if he's maybe wearing down. But look, State is so bad offensively right now, you don't have to do a lot. I think teams are figuring out Mike Wright's limitations. He's a great runner, but just no accuracy with the ball. Kentucky didn't have to do much tonight, and it didn't offensively. You had, 270 yards, but that's good enough for a 24-3 win.
Yeah, no, I mean, hey, when you're Kentucky, sometimes it's just about, listen, when you're on the road, it's not easy to win road games, okay, in the SEC. People think it is, and it's kind of been skewed that way because of in the past, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, what teams like Georgia and Alabama have done, just mowing through people, whether it's home or road. But it is hard to win SEC games on the road, and Kentucky went on the road, played efficient enough. Devin Leary played clean. He didn't play, out of his mind, but he played clean, distributed the football. Ray Davis ran it well. The Kentucky defense played great. Go home with a victory, and now they get to go home and welcome in the Alabama Crimson Tide. And can they be, as Bill Rafferty likes to say in basketball, Chris, can they be the fly in the ointment, so to speak, next week?
All right, last one we have not hit. Tennessee blew out UConn 59-7. Not a lot to talk about there. Jalen Wright has an 82-yard touchdown run on like the second play of the game, and that was kind of that. I don't know. Here's a pet peeve in stats. I wish we would do some kind of scoring thing to where we take account for how many points your defense scores and how many points your offense scores, because Tennessee's defense was plus 11 was on the field today. 2 third-quarter interception returns, Jalen McCullough, Aaron Beasley, and that one. They got Nico Iamaleava some playing time, which people up there have been screaming for. Joe Milton, 11 for 14 for 254, 2-0. That's exactly what you would have wanted. And Iamaleava goes 5-9 for 86 and runs for 25 more. Look, it's kind of your typical Tennessee win that we figured it was going to be. Connecticut's offense isn't very good. Vols kind of shut them out. They did pass for a little bit, but nothing that went to the scoreboard. Tennessee ran it a bunch, and look, again, this was over about 40 seconds in.
Yeah, the Fighting Jim Mora Juniors didn't have much fight in them over there, so it wasn't very good. UConn, this is just basically a glorified scrimmage for Tennessee, and they took care of business. And who does Tennessee have now? Oh, they got Missouri next week. So as we learned this week, and I think that Missouri team is very mature. Tennessee's going to have a fight on their hands, Chris, as they go to Como next week.
All right, we always try to recap the playoff picture at the end of this. Florida State struggled with Pitt today. well into the second half, but ended up winning that one going away. So the Seminoles still unbeaten. Georgia's still unbeaten, and will get a little bit of a boost. Well, I don't know if they'll get a boost to jump Ohio State. Not that it really matters at this point
I think
because
they
the
might, because
games.
Ohio State was struggling with Rutgers.
Yeah, but Ohio State's still got bigger wins. I don't know if we're there yet. No, beat Ole Miss next week, and maybe we got a discussion. It's not going to matter anyway because Ohio State's got to play Michigan. Georgia's got some big games ahead, the SEC title game, all that. I just think it's a lot of moaning about nothing at this point because it's not going to matter. Michigan's what was the Michigan Purdue final today, or is that going on? No, it's over, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it.
Oh, fine.
They
I think it
won
was a complete
41-13. Michigan won 41-13.
Yeah, so another win against a mediocre team for Michigan, which is just about all Michigan has at this point. Ohio State handled Rutgers. That was a game for bits. So you still got those four teams unbeaten. Washington's still unbeaten with the win at Southern Cal by 10 points. You got Oregon. All right, I think that's all the unbeatens now because
Air Force got beat
by a bad Army team. That one
by 20 points.
Yeah, and James Madison's unbeaten but ineligible for the playoffs. So
that's a crime.
There you go. I don't know about a crime, but that anyway. Okay, so that's all your unbeatens, correct?
Yeah, that's all your unbeatens.
Okay, your one loss is Oregon, Alabama looking like your best one-loss teams. Oregon smashed Cal tonight. We know about Alabama, LSU. Oklahoma picked up its second loss today, correct?
Texas is still just got one loss, and arguably, I mean, that's a pretty good win with your quarterback being out over Kansas State. That's a good team. So, and without Quinn Ewers, and remember, Texas has a win over Alabama at Tuscaloosa. So
Louisville beat Virginia Tech. Penn State beat somebody today, right? Maryland, which is a nice win. And
they beat them bad too, 51-15.
So here's your playoff contenders at this point: Florida State, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Washington, Oregon, Texas, Alabama, Louisville, Penn State, Ole Miss. If you squint a little bit, maybe Kansas State and Tennessee. And yeah, that's about it. I don't know if Oklahoma can get there now with 2 losses. So there's your playoff picture exiting Saturday night.
Yeah. So those are teams that have games out in front of them to go prove something. But it was a fun weekend of college football for sure. And guys, make sure everybody subscribes to us here. Hit that like button. If you're in here, you got lots of you in here, go ahead and hit that like button right now. It's free. Subscribe. That's also free. And then turn on notifications for when we do live streams like this. Chris goes live every single day during the week with him and Gavin Shodwall from 12 Eastern, 11 Central to 1 Eastern, 12 Central. So, and then I've got my morning show. We got a lot of content. Blake Lovell's going to be doing basketball. Chris, anything else that I missed that we got coming up? We got predictions on Monday.
Yeah, and I think I did miss one unbeaten. I think Liberty's still unbeaten. So there's that. Not that it really matters. They're not even in the top 25 poll, but just as a point of fact, yeah, Liberty beat Louisiana Tech today to go to 9-0. Not that it matters for the playoff, but just to be factual about it. There we go. Yeah, we'll be back at it on Monday, 11 Central with the live stream, which we'll be doing all 5 days this week. We got previews and predictions coming out. We'll start rolling those out. We'll record them tomorrow night, Sunday night, and roll those out Monday morning, maybe some a little later in the week, depending on how many we get to Sunday night or don't get to. We got your morning report, which is excellent. Got a lot of stuff going on. Oh, and basketball. Basketball starts Monday.
Yeah.
So we're going to be watching that too. So anyway, hit the like button and hit that subscribe button. Enable your notifications if you want to know when we're going live. To tell a friend, whatever you can do to help us out. We do make a living doing this, so we're not just two guys doing it for fun. We are having fun with this, but point is, This is our livelihood, so support us however you can. For Blayne Gilmer, I'm Chris Lee. We are Southeastern 14. Have a great night, great rest of your weekend. Thanks for watching Southeastern 14, presented by Bet Online.